And welcome. Oh, hold on. I got to hit this recording thing. Sorry. Thank you for joining us virtually today. While we miss being in person this month, we want to keep our members safe, and we look forward to returning to in-person gatherings and meeting when our local healthcare partners feel it's safe to do so. We will continue to do our small part in doing anything that might help lessen the strain on local, regional healthcare providers. I'm Darcy Quakenbush. I am with Morgan Insurance Group here in town. I am the chair of the board and on the Resource Development Committee. I've been here several years now. I want to thank the community investment partners, Duke Energy, Economy Heating and Air Conditioning, Home Bank, Citizens Bank, Ivy Tech Community College in Bloomington, South Central Indiana REMC. Our member services team led by Amy Bennett. Amy? We'll host the first morning buzz of 2022 on Thursday, February 3rd at 9 a.m. at the main connection. Notice the time change of 9 a.m. at 460 South Main Street across from H&R Block. Join us for casual networking and a chance to enjoy some coffee and sweet treats available at our new on-site coffee shop, Sarah's Goodies. Save the date for our planned in-person State of the City dinner for Tuesday, March 15th. Of course, as the pandemic is ongoing, we will also be prepared to host a wonderful virtual event if our healthcare partners advise us to pivot once again. Fingers crossed. Watch your email, our Facebook page, and martinsvillechamber.com for all the details, along with information on how to nominate an individual or business for our annual awards: the Outstanding Business Professional, the Outstanding Business, and the coveted Ruth Rusey Spirit of Service Award. We want to welcome our newest chamber members, Doug and Paula Molen. They are the new owners of the Foxcliff Golf Club. Doug and Paula are already busy making significant improvements and fun additions to the golf course and club. We'll hear more from Doug at our next meeting, but in the meantime, please follow the new Foxcliff Golf Club. I struggle with that word. Facebook page so you don't miss any updates. I've asked Amy Bennett, chair of our member services team, to join us now to introduce our presenters. Amy?
All right, welcome. I'm Amy Bennett, and like Darcy said, I'm the chair of the member services team here at the Martinsville Chamber. Also am a local Edward Jones financial advisor. I'm happy to be here. So this is a really exciting time for our community as the completion of 69 through Martinsville brings us many opportunities. So one of those valuable opportunities is the promotion of some of our businesses through the official signage at and near those interchanges and on state highways. So although INDOT, their contractors, haven't officially released these sites where the signs are permitted, we wanted to give our businesses a chance to learn about the process, some of the ideas about cost, and probably most importantly, the qualifications necessary for consideration. So while INDOT always has the final say on this type of signage, the process is handled by a private contractor, the Indiana Logo Sign Company. So that's who we have here with us today. We appreciate Cory Furman, the marketing and compliance coordinator, and then his colleague, Becky Meier. They've graciously agreed to be here today to give us an overview of the logo and TOD signage program. So I'll let Cory and Becky explain the differences in the program and the processes. If everyone doesn't mind just keeping your phone muted so that we don't have any interruptions or feedback, I have put the chat box up. If you're looking below chat, it's a little speech bubble. Feel free to put your questions in the chat box. We'll get to as many of them as possible. This kind of just increases efficiency. So rather than people, unmuting, interrupting each other, put those questions in the chat box, and then Cory and Becky have agreed to answer those, and I will read those aloud to everyone. So Cory and Becky will also be available for individual consultations as we get closer to the potential sign sites, and after that, those sites have been identified. So Cory, why don't you take it from here? Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Amy. Good morning, everybody. As Amy said, my name is Cory Furman, compliance and marketing coordinator here at Indiana Logo Sign Group. Basically, what I want to do today is just go over our program really briefly. That way, everybody that's seeing this live or maybe sees this recording later has a little bit better idea of what this program is. And then if you have interest, obviously, I will speak with you individually because our program is fairly site specific as far as what signage is needed for what business, depends on your location and the location of the exit and so forth. So again, this is just kind of an introductory presentation. It won't be very long, but again, I hope you leave this with maybe a little bit more knowledge than you have right now. So first thing is who we are. And obviously on a Zoom, you've got a window of everybody's heads. So you might have to move that around to be able to read this or whatnot. But as Amy mentioned, we are a private entity that executes this contract on behalf of the state of Indiana. So the program itself, it is a state contracted program. The rules and regulations are in the Indiana Administrative Code, which means it carries the weight of law. We're just the private entity that has been selected by INDOT to handle this program. So that's who we are. Now, as Amy also mentioned, who can be in the program? So, there are 5 categories of businesses that are eligible to participate in our program. Everybody knows gas, food, lodging. Those are the big 3. Campgrounds can participate, and then attractions can participate. Now, attractions is kind of a gray area of what that is. And basically it's anything with a tourism-based audience. And when the state talks about attractions, there's actually 28 subcategories that make up that grouping. Museums, historical sites, made in Indiana, golf courses. But again, if you're on that borderline, I don't know if I qualify, the best thing is to reach out to us. We can talk with you a little bit. Sometimes INDOT will make designations based on the business, because sometimes we'll have a business that category hadn't been encountered yet. So INDOT's pretty good at looking at each business individually. So that is who can participate. Now, anytime we get new construction, sometimes we'll get random inquiries from maybe a doctor's office or a PetSmart or whatnot. Obviously, retail stores do not qualify. Health and doctor's offices do not qualify. But again, we're willing to answer any questions, take any inquiries that might come our way. But again, those are the 5 categories there on your screen of what businesses can participate. So when it comes to, okay, now you know that I own a restaurant. What are the requirements for my restaurant? So there's basically 3 overarching components to compliance. The first is how close you are to the exit. INDOT has different maximum distances that your business may be allowed to be depending on what category you're in. So if you're a restaurant, you can be up to 3 miles away from a logoed interchange. If you're a hotel, you can be up to 4 miles away. If you're a gas station, you can be up to 2 miles away. Attractions are quite a bit different. Attractions and campgrounds can be up to 15 miles away. Then you get into how many turns can I be away? Once the motorist exits the interstate, there's a limit to how many turns that motorist can make to reach your business. So for example, food and gas, you can be 1 turn away. Hotels can be 2. Campgrounds, attractions, there's unlimited turns. So again, it's all very site specific. So the number one thing, how close and how many turns are you away from the logoed interchange? Operational hours are another item that precludes some businesses. Restaurants have to be open a minimum of 6 days per week per Indiana Administrative Code. So we have some restaurants that don't qualify. And then finally, services provided. That's the final thing. Obviously, if you're a restaurant, you've got to serve meals, right? And how many meals you serve. A hotel, you've got to have a minimum of 10 hotel rooms. So I don't want to bombard the minutia right now, but these are the 3 basic things. And again, I'm happy to talk with any business. If you have an interest, reach out to us. We'll go over all these things to make sure that you're eligible. Oops, my fault. Let's try this again. Okay, so pricing is obviously what everybody wants to know first. And when it comes to the pricing, there are basically 2 sides. The primary side is the monthly lease rate that you would pay to have your logo appear on our large blue signs. Okay, that's the main structure. And we'll take a look at those signs here in a moment. And then the secondary price is a one-time cost to make that logo and install it on our background panel. So if you are in this program, you actually own the pieces of aluminum that would say McDonald's or whatnot. Those are actually your physical property. So there is a one-time cost to make and install those things. So when we talk about the types of signs, the program works from the top down, meaning that to be in the program, you have to have this first type of sign, and then the second and third types are issued when necessary. So the type of sign that you have to be in the program is called a mainline sign. And you can see an example of a mainline sign right now on your screen. Mainline signs are the large blue structures that actually will appear on I-69 in this case and inform the motorist of what's coming up at the next exit. So you've got to have a mainline sign to be in the program. The second type of sign we offer is what's called a ramp sign. You might have seen those as well. Those are smaller blue background panels. They've got smaller logos on them, and they have arrows underneath the logo, along with mileage if necessary, that lets the motorist know which way to turn when they get to the end of a ramp. So these signs are actually situated right alongside the exit ramps. They are needed for a business if the motorist cannot readily see a business from the ramp itself. So obviously, if you have a business that's immediately off the ramp and is readily visible, you don't need a ramp sign. Otherwise, you do. Obviously, readily visible is a little bit of a gray term. There's some subjectivity in that. So again, I work with clients independently to make sure that they get the signage that they need for their business. And then third and finally, the last type of sign that we offer is what's called a Trailblazer sign. Trailblazer signs are the same size as ramp signs, but they are needed if the motorist needs to make any additional turns once they get off of the exit ramp. So obviously this sign looks very similar to a ramp, the exact same size. And again, they're needed if the motorist must make an additional turn when they get off of the exit ramp. So Trailblazer signs can be a little bit tricky because we have the right to install our structures on state right-of-ways. So obviously I-69 is a state right-of-way. All the ramps are considered state right-of-way as well. But once we get into, Martinsville City District or the county, we have to get permission before we are allowed to install our Trailblazer signs. We can't just go plopping these around as we see fit. So if you're a business that would require a Trailblazer, I would work with you to talk about that process and see, who we need to get approval from beforehand. But those are the three types of signs. So as far as the cost goes, for gas, food, lodging, and camping, the monthly lease rate for your logo to be on a mainline sign is $146 a month. Now that is per sign, per direction. So if you needed or wanted both northbound and southbound signage, obviously, 146 times 2 would be $292 a month for those two signs. There's nothing that says you have to have both directions. If you want to catch people maybe coming from Indy and you want southbound only, that's certainly an option. Or vice versa, if you want to catch people leaving Bloomington, you can go northbound only. Most of the time, most of our clients like to have both directions when they're available, because obviously it's hard to tell which way your clients will be traveling from, but that's always an option that businesses have if there is availability, which we'll get to later. Ramp signs, like we talked about, $24 a month. Again, those are supplemental signage. A common question we get is, well, can I just get ramp signs only? And the answer, unfortunately, is no. Under administrative code, you've got to have the mainline sign to be in the program first, and ramp signs are supplemental to that mainline signage. And then finally, the Trailblazer sign, same size as the ramp sign and same cost. So again, 146 and 24. Now, for attractions, the state is aware that the business makeup of attractions is typically a little bit different. Usually it's a smaller business scale. We have a lot of mom and pop businesses that are attractions. So the state has given allowance to that, and attractions pay half the rate, as you can see on your screen, $73 a month for the main line instead of $146, and $12 for the ramps and Trailblazers instead of $24. So that's an allowance the state has made just with the understanding of the business types that typically qualify for attractions. Now, as far as the cost and the installation of the logo signs, there are about 3 different companies in the US that have approval from INDOT to have their logos appear on Indiana roadways. We have one of those 3 companies on retainer. I'd say 85 to 90% of our clients use our fabricator, just because it's the ease of one-stop shopping. You know, you basically supply us with your logo if we don't already have it, and we take care of all that for you. And number two, people that do shop around, typically they call me back and say, you know, the prices are basically the same no matter where we go. So we'll just use your fabricator. But you do have choices as a business. Our cost, if you were to use our fabricator, is shown here on the screen, $460 a piece for each main line you order and $250 a piece for each ramp. So that obviously is the upfront cost involved in all of this, which is the bad news. But the good news is that these logo panels tend to last a respectable amount of time. 10 to 15 years is the average life expectancy on these signs before they start to fade and lose their reflectivity, because they're obviously outside all the time. So it's not something you have to do very often, but it is something that you have to do up front. And again, we can talk about that. The one thing I will say is I did mention, you know, the fabricator that produces signs has to be pre-approved by INDOT. So sometimes we'll have companies that like, hey, I got a friend who makes signs. And unfortunately, that is not allowed under INDOT regulations, unless they want to go through the process of getting approved by INDOT, which we could certainly talk about. But typically it's just easier to go with a pre-approved fabricator. So those are the fabrication costs. We talked a little bit about compliance. Compliance is a fairly category specific ideal. So I don't want to get too much in the weeds, like I said earlier, but we do maintain compliance checks annually every year. Most of that is to do an inventory on our structures to make sure that, you know, they look good, they're still there. I mean, these things will occasionally be hit by vehicles or removed by a construction company. So we do an annual compliance check for all of our businesses as well as our structures, just to make sure that, you know, you're still in compliance. Typically, again, the bar is very low as far as a business compliance perspective. And also to make sure, you know, businesses, sometimes they close and they don't tell us. And obviously with COVID, we've suspended a bit of our compliance checks because we've got, you know, a lot of businesses that, you know, have either temporarily closed or altered their hours or maybe altered their business structure. And the state is completely fine with that. As long as this health emergency is under effect, compliance will be given a little bit more grace. Now, Todds is a bit different. And Becky Meier is our Todds coordinator. And I don't want to speak over Becky, but the difference between logo signs and Todds signs is pretty simple. Everything I've talked about so far, the logo program, that takes motorists off of limited access roads to a business. In other words, a road where you've got to take an exit ramp. That's the easiest way to say it. So obviously I-69, every place that you can get off of I-69 in Martinsville is going to have an exit ramp. And that's why you're talking to us today. In the past, State Road 37 was an at-grade roadway, or a road where you can make a simple turn, whether it be a stoplight or a stop sign or just a regular turn where you don't change levels. Your car stays on the same ground the whole time. Todds are these signs that you see on your screen. They're blue signs with white lettering. They are used at grade US and state highways. As you can see there, the cost is a bit different because typically the traffic counts are a little bit less on US and state highways as opposed to limited access interstates and highways. But Todds kind of works in conjunction with a logo program, because if you're on a state or US highway, and let's say you've got a business that you want to have advertised on I-69. So you speak with me and you've got a winery that's a few miles down the road. So with me, you've got mainline signage on I-69, you've got ramp signage, and then you have to go, let's say, east for several miles. And then there's one turn off of a state highway. Well, this is where the Todds program works in conjunction with the logo program, because you could use a Trailblazer sign on the logo side to tell the motorist to turn off that state highway to get to your business. Or in certain situations, Todds signage may work as well. And so the state recognizes Todds signage as an applicable substitute for trailblazing signage. They're a little bit bigger. Becky, I forget how big these signs are we're looking at. You might want to chime in real quick. What are they, 3 feet wide?
These signs are 72 inches by 24 inches, and they're an extruded panel. So they're a substantial sign, as opposed to the trailblazing sign that you have, Cory, that's a flat sheet,
Yep.
if I'm correct. Yeah. So some people will opt for this for two reasons. The fact that they're bigger, and if you're wanting more presence as far as having your logo and your wording out there, sometimes they'll use it in a different direction. If they use the trailblazing sign one way, we might be able to capture it the other way if they wanted. So yeah, like Cory said, they do work in conjunction, leading them off of an interstate, or if it's a state road or US highway that's not near the interstate, then Todds would take over as signage for that attraction.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Becky. You know, Todds can work completely independently of the logo program. You do not need to have logo signage to have Todd signage. But obviously, since we're talking primarily about I-69 right now, I want to make sure people understood that this could be an alternative to Trailblazer signage. Now, the cost, as you see on the screen, $440 annually, is a little bit more than what a Trailblazer sign would be. Trailblazer signs, like I said, for gas, food, lodging is $24 a month, which equates to $288 a year. So you'd pay a little bit more for these Todd signs. But like Becky said, our Trailblazers are 30 by 30 squares, 30 inches by 30 inch squares. These are far bigger. So we do have some clients that prefer Todds when they're available. But again, that's a choice that we would talk about on a business to business basis. And that really is the gist of what I wanted to cover today. Like I said, it's just an overview. Each business is going to have a unique set of circumstances that I obviously speak with each business individually, make a tailor-made quote so you fully understand, you know, what's available, how much it would be, the lease terms, et cetera. But this was just an overview. And Amy and Jamie, I hope that was decent. I assume we may have some questions. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have right now. Otherwise, you know, feel free to contact us directly. I think the last thing, and one thing I forgot to mention, was just the timing of all of this, because obviously if I'm a business in Martinsville, there's probably some urgency, as we've already received several inquiries from businesses, and those that have contacted us already, you're ahead of the game. Unfortunately, our program is typically the last T to be crossed anytime there's new construction. And right now, I think Amy or maybe Jamie mentioned that the contract has yet to be released. So the way construction works is when a contractor has a stretch of roadway that they're doing work on, basically that right of way is their property until they finish the contract. And so we've been told that early summer is kind of the likelihood of when we can get in here, June, July. However, we are meeting with our representative with the state, with INDOT, on Monday of next week. So I hope to have a little bit more clarity, because INDOT is fully aware of, you know, the issues that new road construction causes for local businesses. You know, businesses that used to be visible and right at a stoplight, turn in, swing, get some food. That's no longer the case. So INDOT is sensitive to that. And I think that it's always good that we have a champion in the INDOT that recognizes the importance of our program, because, you know, we want to get people off the road and into your business and back on the road again. But that's kind of just a real quick overview of the timing. We might know more on Monday. And like I said, maybe INDOT will throw their weight around a little bit, and maybe we can have some success of getting in there a little bit sooner. But I'm happy to answer any questions. Hopefully this was at least a decent overview in a relatively short amount of time, but I thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Cory. Before we kick off questions, I do have an apology. I pronounced that TOD, and that's something, if you're in the banking or finance world, that's a transfer on death, which is not the same thing. So sorry for that confusion there. Would you mind, after, if it's public information, after your meeting on Monday, getting Jamie an email, and maybe Jamie could send that out to the chamber member list? That would be fantastic.
I will do that.
Okay. And I do have a question. I don't see any in the chat yet, but I'm thinking of like Pam Hirsch. She's part of our Rediscover Historic Martinsville. So there's some signage, not sure who it's done by, but you know, we want to direct people to historic downtown Martinsville.
Sure.
I can see where that, I'm assuming attraction maybe. Does that fit in that category? Okay.
It does. If you go to our website, indianalogo.com, if you want a little bit more, in-depth information, the subcategories for attractions are on there. And that is true. A historic district does qualify as an attraction. And you brought up another good point. The state of Indiana accepts existing wayfinding signage as Trailblazer signage in a lot of cases. So, if you've got, downtown Martinsville might have some existing wayfinding signage that they've done themselves, and maybe it's quite frankly more attractive than our signage, as most city wayfinding signage tends to be. There would not be a need for Trailblazer signage when you've got an existing city wayfinding signs that might say historic district, to the left. But yes, historic sites are approved as an attraction in the LOGO program.
Great, good to hear. And then another question I had, so some of these bigger corporations, thinking about like the hotel sign that you use for the example, a McDonald's, something that's got a large corporate presence,
Mhm.
is that who does that responsibility fall upon? The local business, or is that like a corporate reach out?
That's a great question. And basically each business does it differently. McDonald's are typically franchised.
Right.
Chick-fil-A is all corporate. All of our contracts go through corporate. So it just depends on the business. We do have a lot of times where the local manager, if it is not a franchisee, maybe they have a corporate office that they go through for all their expenditures. But since they're the ones on the ground, they'll be the one to initiate. And then they'll obviously send that information to whomever. And then I might change hands midway through the process. But yeah, you're right. A lot of times, our program, a lot of times is, once you see it, I'm interested. So we've had a lot of inquiries already. And that's why I say that a lot of your businesses are way ahead of the game because, most of our contracts are filled once we have structures in the ground and people actually see them and like, oh, I'd like to be on there.
Mhm.
So a credit to your businesses for having the foresight to, find out who we are. A lot of times people don't know, who do I even go talk to about these signs? But no, your community is pretty on top of things because we've had several inquiries already.
That's good to hear. And then I'll ask another one. I still don't see anything in the chat. How much the word prospecting comes to mind? Are you guys prospecting businesses? Are you guys doing proactive contacts to them, or does the responsibility solely rely on these businesses in Martinsville to get to hold of you?
Really good question. So the way it works is once we know, we basically know the 5 interchanges that we think will be eligible for signage. Then our contractor crew, they go down there and they put stakes in the ground, right? Where can these signs possibly be? Because we've got to take into consideration, there's regulations for all this, the distance between our structures, existing structures, overpasses, how far back they can be. So we send our contractor down there, they put a bunch of stakes in the ground. Hey, we'd like a sign here, here, and here. And then the local INDOT district will go through, look at those stakes and say, yes to this, no to this, for various reasons, sight lines, whatever it may be. So once we know how many signs we can get at a given interchange, I then will go down personally and notify area businesses that these signs are coming up. And we treat that more as a obligation, like, hey, these are state regulated signs, not as much of a sales tactic, but more just information providing, hey, if you're interested, give us a call. But that's only for obvious businesses. So who gets left out are maybe these attractions that are several miles down the road that we may not be aware of. And that's really where this type of thing is super beneficial, because we might miss, a small distillery that might have an interest in signage, just because it's impossible to canvas everybody. But no, we will go down there, hand out business cards, a flyer, just again to make people aware that this is coming up.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
All right, we'll leave the chat open for just another few minutes. Anybody have anything? Please write it down in the chat.
Yeah, and like I said, since this was so general, my assumption would be that a lot of the questions will be business specific, like, hey, here's my address, talk me through, this turn or whatnot. And again, I'm happy to speak with any business. Obviously, that's what I do. And then we can go over everything, specifically to your needs once we know where the signs will be.
Great. We do have a question from a business owner, Pam, here in Martinsville. If space is limited, so let's say we get a huge interest and everybody wants their logo on a sign, does the priority go to corporations? Great question, Pam.
That is a really good question. And I wish I could give you an easy answer. So a lot of times when I talk with people on the phone, I'm like, well, how much do you really want to know? Because there are tiers of priority in a lot of different ways. So just for your knowledge, Pam, at any given interchange, the most structures we can have in one direction is 4. So you could have the world's busiest interchange and we've got all the room in the world. The max is 4 structures. Doesn't matter where. We can house up to 6 logos on any structure. So obviously the most logos we can have at an exit is 24 logos. And the way it works is when I listed those categories, gas, food, lodging, camping, attraction, that's not done just, by chance. Those are actually the tiers of priority as the state views this program. So the state does not view this program as advertising like you or I might. They view this program as a service to the motorist. So gas takes top tier because obviously, since we're talking about cars, you can't drive without fuel. Food obviously is number 2 because we need food to survive. And then obviously lodging, then camping, then attraction. Now, the rule of 6 comes into play because each category is allowed up to 6 logos if we have, massive interest. So if we've got 12 gas stations that want on the boards, 12 foods, 12 hotels, 12 attractions, 12 campgrounds, the first 6 gas would get those first 6 spots, then the next 6 foods, then the next 6 lodging, and then the next 6 campgrounds, and then attraction, unfortunately, would be out of luck in that situation. But in my 9 years doing this, we've never hit that because, quite frankly, there aren't 6 campgrounds that there's not 6 attractions. Tip gave is usually we have a lot more restaurants at any given exit because very few times will you find 6 gas stations at an exit. It does happen on occasion, but a lot of times we'll have maybe 3 gas stations on the board, 2 hotels, and then we'll have 20 foods that want signage. So the state did allow the maximum number of logos for a specific service type up to 12. And again, that's called the unused space addendum. So if you've got 20 restaurants that want on the boards and we've got 4 structures, 3 gas, 2 hotels, 1 campground, 1 attraction, we've got several spaces left. We can use up to 12 of those for any specific service type, whether it be food, gas, or lodging, campground, attraction. So it gets a little bit hairy, but most of the time we can provide services to all the businesses that are interested, but we do have very busy exits throughout the state where, we're limited and we have people on a wait list. And that's just kind of the nature of the beast. That's a really good question. I hope I didn't get too specific.
Great. Thank you so much. I don't see any other questions, but thank you guys so much for your time today. This is one of those things that you see all the time every day, but no idea I never had any idea that this much thought and process and, just stuff went into all of this. So thank you. So informative. I'm thinking of a couple businesses that I hope watch this presentation or get this information.
You're welcome. Thanks so much.
Yeah. A few reminders before we close. Just as far as the chamber goes, we are looking for active members who want to be more involved with the work of our chamber through participation on a committee or a project and even on our board. If you are interested or know someone who might be a good fit, please feel free to give Jamie a call at the office. And as a reminder, this presentation has been recorded. It will be available on the website, the chamber website, and our YouTube channel early next week at the latest. Please feel free to share this link to the recording with others who may have missed it. Again, I've got plenty of small businesses in mind here that I feel like need to know this stuff. As a chamber, we're here to assist our members and organizations. Obviously, things have been crazy. Here we are on Zoom almost 2 years later. Who would have thought? But if there's anything that we can do to help, please reach out via phone, chamber number 8110 or email at info@martinsvillechamber.com. Last announcement, actually, I'm going to add one more. Please be on the lookout. Darcy did announce we are planning for an in-person State of the City. So please be on the lookout for ways that you can support via sponsorship or silent auction items. We will be calling you soon. But our next meeting is scheduled for Friday, February 18th. Stay tuned to Facebook and martinsvillechamber.com for details on upcoming events, sponsorship opportunities, member announcements, events. But most of all, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Have a wonderful weekend.